The room returns before the year does. A narrow hallway, lights long since dulled, a door that never quite closed. Dust hangs where motion once mattered. Time feels paused, not ended, as if the air itself remembers. I stand where I stood decades earlier, careful with my breath, careful with the floor, letting the stillness speak first. Kentucky, 1987, returns without permission, and the silence carries weight. Something was left here, something small, something that refused to stay buried. The house sits outside Elkhorn City, tucked into a bend of road that never needed a name. Back then, it was just another rental with thin walls and a porch that leaned. Now it is a shell, condemned but not erased. I push the door with 2 fingers. The hinge answers with a tired sound familiar. It smells of old paper and dry wood, a trace of cold that never warmed. Memory sharpens. I do not rush it. She was called Maribel Hayes, 22. She grew up 2 counties over, daughter of a night nurse and a father who worked rails until his back refused. She liked lists, kept notebooks with dates circled, plans that assumed time would cooperate. She had moved here in the spring of 1987, chasing quiet and a job at the county records office. People remembered her as polite, precise, careful with words. She did not linger in rooms. She left them as she found them. I step into the living area, counting boards the way I used to. The carpet is gone. The outline remains. In my pocket, a key I should have returned years ago presses against my palm. Evidence becomes habit before it becomes burden. I pause where a table once stood. The light through the window makes a pale rectangle on the floor. It was like this then. Afternoon, the kind that pretends nothing has changed. We believed the scene had given all it could. We believed the file was complete. Belief is efficient. It saves time. It costs later. A photo sits in my mind first, not in my hand. Black and white, taken by a deputy with a steady wrist. The frame caught the corner of the room, a lamp unplugged, a notebook closed. That notebook had been catalogued, skimmed, returned. I remember the sound when it shut. Paper meeting paper. Final. I move toward the back room. My shoes find dust. It lifts, settles. The air tastes old. I open a cabinet that no one opened then because it was empty. It still looks empty. That is how absence hides. I rest my fingers on the shelf, feel a groove where something rested long enough to leave a mark. It is small. A rectangle. Logic wakes quietly. Back in 1987, we talked softly. Not because we were told to, but because the house asked it of us. A neighbor had said she heard nothing unusual. A coworker mentioned a missed lunch. A manager filed a note. Pieces that made a picture smooth enough to frame. We filed it away. I sit on the floor now. The file is heavy in my bag. Paper has weight when it carries years. I open it. The smell of ink and dust mixes. Reports read clean. Timelines line up. Interviews end where they should. There is a gap so thin it looks like margin. Maribel's notebook is described in a paragraph. Lists of tasks, grocery items, a reminder to call her mother. No mention of the last page, because the last page was blank, or so we wrote. I close my eyes. The sound of paper returns. The weight of guilt arrives without drama. It does not accuse, it waits. A fragment of dialogue surfaces, a voice from the hallway, probably nothing. Another voice, mine, log it anyway. We logged. We moved on. The case cooled the way rooms do when lights go out. I stand and return to the cabinet, the groove again. I slide a finger along it, measure. A photograph fits that space, or a thin envelope. Something that would not be in a notebook because it was not meant to be read, only kept close. Outside, wind moves the trees. Inside, the house holds its breath. I pull a small flashlight from my bag and angle it low. Dust reveals patterns. Footprints overlap old ones. Mine now. I follow them to the window. The sill has a notch. Paint worn by habit. Someone stood here often. In the file, a statement from a friend mentions Maribel liked the view. The road, the bend, the way evening came early. It was a detail that felt human. It was filed under color. I imagine her standing here, holding something thin, deciding whether to keep it hidden or let it go. Decisions are quiet until they are not. The county record's office appears in my memory next. Rows of files, the sound of drawers. Maribel had access to maps, deeds, changes logged by date. She noticed inconsistencies. She asked a question once, careful, to the wrong person. That is in the supplemental notes, buried after page 30. I turn pages. There it is. A memo from a clerk, unsigned, noting a correction requested twice. A parcel number adjusted, then adjusted back. The margins are narrow. The date matches the week she moved in. This is how twists arrive, not with force but with alignment. I return the file to my bag and sit again. The house does not resist. I let the silence work. The smell of dust steadies me. The sound of paper echoes. The weight of years presses, then lifts just enough to breathe. Outside, a car passes. Life continues with or without our attention. Inside, something small has shifted. A groove on a shelf. A note in a margin. A question asked once, then forgotten. I leave the house as I found it, door not quite closed. Evidence remains where it wants to be. Justice, when it comes, will arrive in forms and stamps precise and complete. It will not warm the room. It will not answer everything. In the quiet after, something human will still wait here. In the dust and the paper and the small decisions that ask to be seen again. I return to the office before night settles, the building unchanged in ways that matter. Fluorescent lights hum with the same patience they always had. Files wait without judgment. I set my bag down, open it, and let the contents rest on the desk. Paper stacks into order. The file from 1987 slides to the center. The margin note stays with me, thin as a whisper, steady as a clock. Records tell stories when asked the right way. I ask slowly, parcel numbers first, dates second, hands that touched the pages third. In Kentucky that year, land moved quietly between names that repeated like habits. The correction Maribel flagged appears again, linked to a boundary line adjusted by inches. Inches matter when a view becomes access. Access becomes opportunity. Opportunity becomes motive without raising its voice. I trace the chain. A company dissolved before it was noticed. A new entity formed with the same address and a different signature. The clerk who processed the changes retired early. The supervisor transferred. None of it illegal on its face. All of it precise. Maribel noticed precision when it disguised intent. I pull a photograph from the file, the lamp unplugged, the notebook closed, the window bright. There is a reflection in the glass I never catalogued, a shape that could be a person or could be the room itself. I lean closer. The angle suggests someone standing where the cabinet sits, someone familiar with the space, someone unafraid. A memory returns uninvited, a brief exchange in the hallway of the record's office. You double-checked, a pause. Yes, a nod, that was it, nothing more, nothing less. I request copies from storage. The clerk brings them without comment. We work in silence. The sound of paper is the only witness. When the copies arrive, the margins reveal something the originals hid. A pressure mark where a note once sat. Not written, placed. A reminder carried, then removed. I cross-reference phone logs. Landlines speak in patterns. Calls repeat at hours people think no one notices. Maribel called her mother weekly. That week she called twice. Short calls, reassuring. She did not explain. She rarely did. The next step is methodical. I visit the county map room. The old maps remain, folded like careful secrets. I lay them flat, aligning edges. The corrected parcel sits near the road bend Maribel liked. The view becomes a corridor. The corridor leads to a structure never inspected because it did not need to be. A storage building listed as temporary, made permanent by neglect. I stand there alone, dust again, the smell of paper again. The weight returns, familiar now. I imagine Maribel here, notebook closed, holding a thin envelope, deciding where to place it. I imagine her choosing the cabinet because it was ordinary, because ordinary hides best. Back at the desk, I draft a memo, clean language, dates, facts, no speculation. The memo goes to a unit that did not exist in 1987. Systems improve when time demands it. A review opens. The word feels mechanical. It is. Interviews follow, minimal, fragmented. A retired clerk says, "I remember her." A pause, careful. Another says, "Maps change." Another says, "Nothing." Silence counts. A name surfaces, not as a revelation but as a convergence. A man connected to the dissolved company, later to the storage building, later to a trust. He lived within sight of the bend. He liked quiet. He disliked questions. He left the county the year after Maribel moved in. That is not coincidence. It is sequence. I request travel records. I receive them. Dates align. The week of the corrections, he was present. The day Maribel did not return to work, he departed. The logic tightens without force. There is a photograph from a local paper, a ribbon cutting for a community project. Faces smile. In the background, the man stands near the window. The reflection matches the shape in Maribel's window. Small, devastating. A presence noticed only when sought. I sit with the file closed. The office hums. Justice advances on rails built for it. Warrants follow language. Language follows facts. I do not celebrate. I document. When the call comes, it is brief. Proceeding. I acknowledge. I write. The machinery turns. Later, alone, I open Maribel's notebook. A blank page remains blank. That matters. It means she chose not to write what she could have. It means she trusted the placement instead. The cabinet groove returns to mind. Evidence like a ghost, present by absence. The arrest occurs far from the bend, in a town that did not watch the road. The words are formal, the process exact. The community reacts as communities do, with surprise shaped by distance. Shock is a form of attention. I return to the house once more. The door still does not close. The light still makes a rectangle. I stand where she stood. I do not speak. I do not apologize. I acknowledge. Justice completes its steps with care. Forms filed. Dates set. Outcomes recorded. The room remains unchanged. Something human lingers, not asking for resolution, only recognition. I leave the key on the sill. I wait through the procedural season that follows, the weeks measured by notices and calendars. The work becomes quieter not because it is finished, but because it has found its channel. Papers move between offices. Decisions are logged. The language stays clean. Nothing rushes. In Kentucky, patience has always been a tool, and I let it do what it does best. I think about Maribel Hayes as the record reframes her. Not a symbol, not a headline. A woman who liked lists, who trusted margins, who understood that precision could reveal what volume concealed. Her age remains 22 on every page. Time does not add to it. Background fields repeat. Childhood towns, family routines, a job that valued order. These facts do not change. Our understanding does. The small item never appears. The thin envelope, the photograph, whatever rested in that cabinet groove remains unnamed. That absence becomes the most accurate detail in the case. It suggests intent without insisting on display. It respects her choice. I accept that. Some evidence teaches by staying quiet. Hearings proceed as hearings do, with schedules that honor process. I attend when necessary, sit where observers sit when their role is complete. The language is careful, the tone measured. Outcomes align with the logic already established. Nothing surprising occurs. That too feels right. Outside, seasons shift. Leaves thin. Roads shine after rain. The bend near the house looks the same, the view still narrowing into a corridor that carries sound farther than people expect. I stopped there once, engine off, listening. The place does not explain itself. It never did. Community reactions arrive in layers. First curiosity, then certainty, then a kind of settling. People adjust their understanding of past years, reassigning small moments to a new order. It is not dramatic, it is practical. Lives continue with revisions, not rewrites. I receive a note from the records office. A junior clerk thanks me for showing how margins matter. The sentence is plain, I keep it. Teaching happens without ceremony. It lasts. There is a final document to sign, a completion that closes the loop without closing the room. The wording avoids flourish. It states findings. It records conclusions. It leaves space where space belongs. I sign with a steady hand. The pen sounds the same as it always has. Later, I return the file to storage. The box is new. The label is clear. I place it carefully, aligning corners. Order is a comfort but not a cure. I do not expect it to be. I visit Maribel's mother once, bringing nothing but time. We sit at a table that has held decades of ordinary meals. I speak in sentences that do not press. She listens in the way people do when they already know the shape of what they will hear. We share quiet. That is enough. Driving home, dusk arrives without announcement. The sky dims evenly like a photograph exposed correctly. I think about the first day I entered that house and the last. I think about the groove on the shelf, the pressure mark in a margin, the reflection that waited for attention. Logic did the work. Care made it possible. Justice completes its tasks and steps aside. It leaves behind paperwork and dates and a sense of correctness that does not feel warm. It is not meant to. What remains is human and therefore incomplete. Recognition without repair. Accuracy without comfort. At my desk, I clean a drawer. Old keys gather in a small tray. I keep only the ones that still open something. The rest I let go. The key from the house is not there. I left it where it belonged. I write a final note to myself, not for a file. It says, return quietly. Listen first. Trust small alignments. It is not advice. It is a reminder. Night settles. The office hum fades. I turn off the light and pause, letting the dark arrive fully before moving. Some rooms need that respect. When I leave, the door closes the way it always has, not quite final, not quite open. That feels right. Something human remains and it does not ask to be finished. In the months that follow, I notice how often people speak about endings. They prefer the idea of a line drawn cleanly across time. I understand the appeal. Lines simplify memory, but this case never asked for simplicity. It asked for attention. Attention, once given, changes how endings feel. They become pauses instead. I walk the stacks again one afternoon, not because I need to, but because habit brings clarity. The rows are quiet. Labels face forward. Dates sit beside names without emphasis. This is where stories rest when they are done speaking aloud. I place my hand on the box and feel nothing unusual. That is a sign of completion, not of forgetting. A colleague asks softly, anything else? I answer, no. The word is accurate. It is also incomplete. Accuracy serves the work. Incompleteness serves the people. I review the maps one last time, not for errors, but for appreciation. Cartography is patience made visible. Lines wait to be read. Boundaries wait to be understood. Maribel understood them. That knowledge mattered. It mattered enough to change the outcome years later. Time did not erase it. It stored it. I think about how small actions travel, a question asked once, a correction requested twice, a notebook kept closed. None of these announces itself. Together they form a method. Methods outlast moments. When the official communications end, silence returns in a new way. It is not the silence of neglect. It is the silence of settled facts. I let it stand. I do not fill it with commentary. Commentary fades. Records endure. At home, I sort old notes from cases long past. Some are faded. Some still read sharp. I discard what no longer teaches. I keep what does. The lesson here is not caution. It is care. I visit the bend again in early morning when fog lifts slowly and sound travels farther than sight. The road curves as it always has. The view remains narrow, focused. I understand now why she liked it. It rewards attention. It punishes hurry. It makes observation feel like participation. Standing there, I do not reconstruct events. Reconstruction has its limits. Instead, I acknowledge presence. Hers, mine, the place. That feels sufficient. There is a report released to the public, summarized and precise. It avoids spectacle. It honors sequence. People read it and move on. That is how shared understanding works. It does not linger in every mind. It does not need to. I receive one more message, brief, unsigned, thanking the office for clarity. I do not try to identify the sender. Gratitude does not require attribution. As winter approaches, the light changes early. The office windows reflect the room back at itself. Reflections can mislead or reveal depending on where you stand. I choose my angle with care. On the final day of the year, I make a note in a personal ledger, not a professional one. It reads, accuracy achieved, humanity acknowledged. The words are plain. They do not celebrate, they recognize. I close the ledger and place it on a shelf that holds other years. The shelf bears small grooves from use. I run my finger along them, feeling the accumulation of time. Grooves are not damage. They are evidence of purpose. When I think of Maribel Hayes now, I think of her method more than her absence. That is the correction time has made. It aligns with who she was. It respects her work. The case rests. I do not check on it again. Trust replaces vigilance. That transition matters. It marks the return to balance. In the quiet that follows, I notice something simple and enduring. The work, done carefully, leaves room for life to continue without interruption. That is its highest function. It does not demand attention. It permits it elsewhere. I turn off the last light, step into the evening, and let the door settle behind me. The sound is familiar, reassuring. Not final, just complete enough to hold. Something human remains and it keeps its place. Before sleep, I reflect on the discipline the work demands. It asks for restraint, for listening beyond the obvious, for patience with margins and quiet marks. It asks us to accept that precision can be an act of care. I carry that forward not as a burden but as a standard. Tomorrow will bring new files, new rooms, new silences. I will enter them the same way, slowly, attentive, willing to let small things speak. That willingness is the only promise the work ever required. It is enough. It will remain enough. Accuracy holds. Humanity waits. The balance stays quiet and steady without asking to be named or completed again. I accept that and leave the room as it is with care. Nothing is required and nothing less will do. I sit with the conclusion longer than procedure requires, letting it exist without pressure to resolve into summary. Finality is a function of paperwork, not understanding. Understanding arrives unevenly, often after the forms are filed and the room has emptied. I accept that sequence now. It no longer troubles me. What remains with me is not the resolution but the method that carried us there. The care taken with edges, the patience with small marks, the refusal to dismiss what appeared ordinary. These are not heroic traits. They are habits. Habits persist when memory fades. They build outcomes quietly. Maribel Hayes remains present in that way, not as an absence defined by loss but as a presence defined by attention. Her work ethic, her restraint, her choice to notice without spectacle. The record now reflects that more accurately than it ever could in 1987. Time, applied carefully, corrected its own oversight. I think often about the cabinet shelf and the groove that told a story without words. Objects remember pressure. Paper remembers placement. Rooms remember where people stood. These memories are not sentimental. They are physical. They ask only to be read properly. The system did what systems do. It processed information, applied standards, produced outcomes. It performed correctly. I respect that. Yet the system did not notice the groove. A person did. That difference matters, and it always will. I file the last correspondence and power down the desk lamp. The light fades evenly, without drama. The office accepts darkness as easily as it accepts illumination. Spaces designed for work understand transition. They do not resist it. Outside, the street is quiet. The evening air carries the smell of damp leaves and cooling pavement. I pause before walking to the car, not out of hesitation but acknowledgement. The work here is finished. The habit remains. Driving home, I take the longer route without deciding to. Roads have preferences shaped by repetition. The bend near Elkhorn City does not appear tonight. That is fine. Presence does not require constant return. It requires respect. At home, I place my jacket over a chair and wash my hands. The water runs clear. Small rituals close larger chapters. I have learned to value that proportionality. It keeps scale honest. Later, I review nothing. I open no files. I allow the evening to exist without purpose. This, too, is part of the work. Rest preserves precision. Silence sharpens attention. In the days that follow, the case recedes naturally. Not forgotten. Integrated. It becomes reference rather than focus. That is the healthiest outcome any investigation can hope for. I notice changes in how I read new files. Margins draw my eye first. I linger over what is not emphasized. I listen longer before forming conclusions. These adjustments are subtle. They do not announce themselves. They accumulate. Colleagues ask fewer questions about the outcome and more about the process. That shift matters. It signals continuity rather than closure. Continuity sustains standards long after individual cases conclude. One afternoon, I receive a package from the records office. Inside is a clean notebook, unmarked. No note attached. I understand the gesture without interpretation. I place it on my desk and leave it there, unopened. Some symbols work best unused. I think again of Maribel's lists, her circled dates, her assumption that time would cooperate. Time rarely does. Attention can compensate. That may be the most practical lesson she left behind. When I pass the storage area where the file now rests, I do not stop. Trust has replaced vigilance. That transition signals completion more clearly than any document ever could. The community adjusts. Stories settle into memory with less sharpness. That, too, is appropriate. Memory should not wound indefinitely. It should inform gently. I reflect on the word solved, often used too freely. Problems can be solved. People are understood. This distinction shapes how outcomes feel. In this case, understanding arrived late but intact. That counts. As months pass, I find that the work has altered my internal pace. I move slower through rooms, faster through assumptions. The balance feels right. It feels earned. I return once more to the idea of the groove because it encapsulates everything. Pressure applied consistently leaves a mark. Attention recognizes it. Care interprets it. Action follows. The sequence is simple. It is also rare. In quieter moments, I acknowledge the weight that lifted when accuracy aligned with truth. Not relief, alignment. The difference is important. Relief fades. Alignment endures. The office continues. New cases arrive. New rooms wait. I enter them the same way I always have, but with refined patience. Experience does not change posture. It refines intention. I write a final personal note not to conclude the case but to frame it within my own standards. It reads, "Method matters. Silence informs. Small things persist." I close the notebook and leave it blank beyond that. Blank pages invite future care. As the year turns, I do not mark the date. Calendars change without acknowledgement. Work continues without ceremony. That is its strength. I stand at the window one evening and notice my reflection layered over the room behind me. I adjust my position until the reflection disappears. Clear sight requires the right angle. That is true in rooms and in records. Before sleep, I consider what remains unresolved. Not facts, not procedures. What remains is human texture, and it is meant to remain. Completion that erases humanity is not completion at all. I accept that justice, executed correctly, feels quiet. It does not comfort. It does not console. It corrects. Humanity fills the rest. The night deepens. The house settles. I turn off the last light and let darkness arrive fully before moving. Some habits deserve preservation. Tomorrow will bring new margins, new grooves, new opportunities for attention. I will meet them without urgency. Precision does not hurry. Care does not announce itself. Together, they are sufficient. This case no longer asks anything of me. That is how I know it is finished. Something human remains, steady and unnamed, and it does not need further words.